Thank you, everybody. Get the roll call up. Okay, Representative Seconder was not able to make it today. Director Strauss,
Here.
Senator Harvey, Senator Noland, don't think he was able to make it. Senator Zolnikoff,
I'm here.
Representative Etchart, Representative Teal,
Here.
Dr. Harrington,
Here.
Stacy Anderson,
Here.
Tanner Avery,
I'm here.
Webb Brown,
I'm here too.
Ed Buttrey,
Here.
Jennifer Hensley,
Here.
Troy Jensen, no. Tony King,
Here.
Alan Lloyd,
Here.
Brad Longcake,
Here.
Kristen McCauley,
Here.
Amy Narrison,
Here.
Allison Paul,
Here.
I see you, yep, and Jason Small.
Here.
Great, that is everybody for the subcommittee, and then for staff today, Aaron Sullivan with your lead staff for all of this fun stuff. We have Jennifer Stallkamp, who is subbing in for Quinlan today as your legal counsel. And Kevin Bragg is here, licensing bureau chief. And then, of course, we have Lisa Patzer, who is running all of our technology. And that is everybody.
Great. Thanks, Aaron.
Mhm.
So moving on to the agenda, then we'll get right into subcommittee considerations. Aaron, I'm going to defer to you on much of this, if that's okay.
Yes. So let's see here. So the first item is a couple follow-ups that I have for you on some recommendations that you worked on earlier in the year and were presented to the full task force back in June. So we'll just start with the centralized background check and reuse. So hold on, I'll just go ahead and share my screen. Okay, if everybody could see this document, that's great. So what I did is based on the information that we had discussed, there was a couple follow-up items. And so we looked through and tried to figure out the best way to address using the national entities and streamlining that process. There was a bunch of different statutes that actually said the name of the organization, the accrediting body or whatever. Some of those could be outdated. One of the options was to add in or its successor afterwards within the statute. And so if something happens in 2 years where the organization's name changes, then the successors, still has the authority in the statute. Shoot, you know what? I am so sorry. I'm talking about the wrong thing. Okay, we're gonna switch. It's it's been a long week. So this is national certification streamlining. That's what I meant. So this is just an updated recommendation. Hopefully you guys all had a chance to read through it. But basically, yeah, we went through and we did the homework. And so the updated recommendation is to make an amendment to section 37-1-101. So the department would have to establish a uniform process consistent with the rest of Title 37 and any rules for accepting, evaluating, and verification of applicants' education, training, examination, and all of that. So this is really just kind of an updated recommendation that I just tried to describe. And then in there, I added something for basically the department to do a review process over the next interim. And so the department should complete a review that identifies qualifications that may be established through reliable primary source national verification, application documentation that's duplicative, Montana-specific requirements that are necessary to remain to protect public health, safety, and welfare, and then any statutory or regulatory references to any of these national bodies that may require some amendments or successor entity language. So there is a suggested draft that you guys can look at and decide if this is some the kind of the if I did the right thing with this direction. And so you can see this is 37.1.101, and we just have some amending language down here to basically say that part of the responsibilities are to establish this process. And then that the department or a board can rely on the primary source verification only if certain things. Um, and then one thing in here, so instead of going, so if you look at sub E, it says, for the purposes of administering all of these things, a reference to a national credentialing, accrediting, examination, or verification entity includes the successor if they are substantially the same. So put this in here, and so it can be applicable to all of Title 37 instead of going through every single Practice Act and statute and pulling those in and adding in or its successor. So at this point, this is kind of the first step in doing this, basically saying, successors apply if necessary. But then in this new section two, which is kind of the implementation and review process that would take place over the next interim, the department can kind of compile the list and make suggestions at the end of any actual statutes, like specific statutes that should be pulled into like a cleanup bill to add in or its successor. I hope that makes sense. This would not be codified. This is just like instructions. It's temporary. Basically, hopefully, Kevin and his team can finish this review process by the end or by mid 2028 and then present it as a potential agency bill cleanup for the 2029 legislative session. I really hope that all made sense.
I think it makes sense, Aaron. I appreciate the overview. Is there any discussion regarding this consideration? Quiet group this morning so far.
So if there's no objection, I can include the updated recommendation as well as the draft bill to the in the packet, the meeting materials packet for next week. If you guys think that the bill is getting too much in the weeds, and you'd rather just have the recommendation document in your packet, then I'm happy to just include that as well. It's really up to you guys how you want the information presented to the full task force.
Ms. Anderson.
Thank you, Chair. I would just support the inclusion of the draft legislation in the full packet for next Friday. I think it gives context and language to what the recommendation is so they can see it in the plain language of how the statute would change.
Okay.
And are we looking to make a motion on this, Aaron, as part of our subcommittee, or this just be something included for the full board to consider?
No, so since that's just a subcommittee to a task force, we don't need like any formal motions and votes and stuff. If anybody has real heartburn about it, then please speak up. But if not, I will take um, your words and Stacy's words as direction to move forward and include both the updated recommendation and the draft in your meeting packet for next week.
Great.
Okay.
Any additional comment or objection to what Aaron just discussed? Doesn't look like it.
Okay, so back to this one, the background check. So taking all the information you guys recommended, coming up with a centralized background check provision and allowable reuse over a certain time frame. So that was all discussed at the June meeting. There were some follow-up pieces to it, specifically. So in the original recommendation that we presented in Billings, it was not sure if it should be like a 3 year, a 5 year, 7 year, what's the period, and then, what other parameters. So this is an updated recommendation that kind of addresses those. And again, I have a sample bill that we can go through in just a minute. And these, both the previous bill and this one, we've done legal review and program review and all of that. And so they're pretty good in or at a good spot, I guess, unless you guys have some major changes you'd like to make. But basically, so the updated recommendation says that the original one requested development of this framework, but left the reuse period, scope, and information sharing approach for further consideration. And so this, we've done our homework, and this updated recommendation reflects a completed bill, and it selects a 5 year reuse period. It limits the framework to specified DLI administered Title 37 credentials, establishes a verification-only centralized process, defines the required applicant attestation and circumstances requiring a new check, and preserves existing board and program authority until this is codified. And I think that was something that was pretty important, I believe. Representative Buttry mentioned that. And so, we have background check provisions in place for compacts. And so we don't want there to be like a weird lag time where we can't utilize the existing statutes before this one is enacted. So so again, just some updated policy benefits and limitations, implementation considerations. These are more just like directions to make sure that we did the draft correctly. And then this is a sample motion that it will be Representative Seconder providing this report. And I'm going through all of this stuff with him next week, and so he can be prepared. But this is something that he can state for the full task force if you guys like this direction. And I'll go ahead and pull the bill up just so you can see what it looks like. So there would be a new section. I need to bold that. Dang it. I always find my mistakes when I'm going through this with you guys. Oh. So this would be a new section that says it's a centralized criminal history background check, reuse, and limitations. So there's a couple definitions in here that would be included. And so just kind of going through this, a qualifying background check means state, federal criminal history background check that was required by state law as a prerequisite to the issuance of the license administered by the department under this title. So again, this will be in Title 37. It was completed through submission of fingerprints to the DOJ and FBI and was completed not more than 5 years before the department receives the additional license application. And so then there's some other information in here to kind of centralize and streamline the background checks. And so this goes through subsection 2, all of the occupations that do require a background check at this point. And so in the future, if a new program or board or an occupation, a license were to be established that required a background check, then this would be what would be amended. And so instead of putting a specific background check language within the Practice Act, it would just revert to this. And so you can see we've got a physician that applies for expedited licensure under 37.3.356. We've got certain pharmacy licenses that require it, APRNs, all the nursing, and you can see it references back to the different chapters. And so we've got nursing, we've got psychology, we have PAs, nutritionists and dietitians, massage therapists, all of behavioral health. Every single license and candidate license does require a background check, and so they're all listed in here. Respiratory care, real estate appraiser, private investigators, and audiologists. And we do have the updated, so you can see right here, Chapter 78. That is the new chapter for the PRADA board. And so audiologists moved under that, and occupational therapists and physical therapists. So if you see that, like, why are those all like that? It's because they all are now under the same board under a new chapter. So this has been updated. And then just a little more information about fingerprinting And then the attestation information, let's see here. It does not authorize the sharing or retaining of any criminal justice or confidential information except as authorized under 44 Chapter 5. And let's see here. And then obviously allows departments and boards rulemaking authority. And I think that is it. And then we have under an amendment under 371307, which is board authority. Basically, the rest of the bill just kind of goes through cross-referencing. And so this is, they can grant or deny a license after receiving this, an information report or verification under Section 1 that a qualifying background check was completed. And then let's see here. This is all moved into the new section. And so I don't know why. Okay, whatever. I'll fix the drafting if necessary. But oh yeah, here it is. Okay, so instead of all of this, it just says a board shall comply with the requirements of Section 1 regarding criminal background checks. And then the rest of the bill you can see are in the individual practice acts. And so we just went through and updated the reference. And so instead of each one having its own individual information, it just says it reverts back to or references back to Section 1. So those are all these, and I'll make you guys dizzy by scrolling fast. At the end, there is a savings clause, I think. Wait, hold on. There we go. So, and just so you're aware, the reason why this is the only section that's repealed is there's actually in the dietitian and nutritionist practice acts, there were 2 background check provisions. So just got rid of one of them to remove redundancy. And then this will be codified in Part 3, which are which is the part that is specific to licensing boards. And then let's see here. Yeah, okay, so then here's the savings clause. So notwithstanding these sections, the statutes governing criminal history background checks that are amended by those sections as they existed immediately before the effective date of the act remain in full force and effect until Section 1 is codified. And so hopefully that will help with the any gaps. And then there's an applicability section that it applies to applications received on or after October 1st, 2027, which would be the effective date of the act. Questions?
Mr. Chair and Aaron, this is Ed Buttrey. I really appreciate this work. I think this is going to have a really large impact. I know Dr. Harrington and some others also had input on it. So I appreciate all the work you did in getting this done. I think it's an important change that we can make as part of the task force. Thank you.
Aaron.
Hi, Aaron. Thank you. I echo Representative Buttrey's sentiments. You, I think, said it at the top, but I want to make sure that I heard you. Is it subject to a self-attestation that nothing would have changed the fingerprints in the previous 5 years?
I can't remember exactly how I worded it. Let's go back up and just look at it. Okay. Okay, so
I know I saw something in there. I just couldn't remember the words.
yeah, so it's they submit an attestation in a form approved by the department that since the qualifying check was completed, they have not been charged with or convicted of a criminal offense other than a misdemeanor traffic offense not involving alcohol or drugs, and then the board can determine that the applicant otherwise meets the requirements for the additional license.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I appreciate the thoughtful language
Of course.
Around this, and I am in full support.
Okay. And again, I think if we're going to provide the draft language for the national certifications, it's appropriate to provide this language as well next week for the full task force to see exactly what decisions were made and what the outcome is.
Thanks, Aaron. Looks great.
Okay. All right, well, so those were the updates, and so I will make sure to include those in your meeting packets for next week. And to maybe to help Representative Seconder along, since so Eric's not going to be at the meeting, and so Representative Seconder will be the one that will be presenting the barriers recommendations. So if you guys could just keep that in mind that he hasn't been at some of these meetings, and so if you want to help him out with some background during the meeting, I think he would appreciate that.
All right, so I guess moving on the agenda then, Aaron. I don't know if there's some new topics that we plan on discussing or how you want to lead through this, but I'll just defer to you to let it rip.
All right. So the next item on the agenda has to do with, yeah, kind of a review topic. We didn't spend a lot of time on this, but there was one of the, in the work plan, one of the topics was kind of a big smooshing of looking at training, education, scope of practice, workforce shortage, service access barriers. So I provided a background paper a few months ago, and we didn't really have time to kind of get into it at that meeting. And so, if you recall, one of the several surveys that you filled out, I put together like a survey or a poll for you to review, and then we were going to pick it back up at our last meeting, which we canceled. And so now we're picking it back up now. So this is just trying to um, address all the different work topics that you guys put into your plan. So I will go ahead and share this. And I have some comments, so I'll just go through and see here. Okay, here we go. So this is the document that I'm referring to. Hopefully you guys all had a chance to kind of read through it. So basically what this topic, it brings together several barriers that the subcommittee has heard about through that survey and that other paper and other related discussions. These include the cost and availability of education and training, limits on practice or delegation in underserved settings, unclear supervision requirements, and delays in the licensing process. This paper also includes a separate issue involving medication administration in correctional and congregate care settings. The recommendations reflect the survey feedback that you provided a couple months ago, showing strong support for reviewing education and training barriers, scope of practice and delegation barriers, supervision requirements, rural clinical oversight eligibility, licensing process bottlenecks, and medication administration authority in non-traditional care settings. So the issues are grouped into 4 possible work streams, and so you can decide what, if anything, should move forward. The paper is not saying that every issue needs legislation or that every work stream needs to be advanced. The goal today, since it's our last meeting, is to talk through these issues, decide which ones are worth additional work, and give staff direction on the next step. So the 4 areas, let's see here, start with that one. So education and training. So the first question is whether some education hours, degree requirements, clinical placements, costs, or Montana specific requirements make it harder than necessary to enter a high need occupation. So this would be a review, not a proposal to remove training or competency standards. The point would be to ask whether each requirement is necessary, supported by evidence, and reasonably available, especially in rural areas. The purpose is not to eliminate education, clinical training, or competence requirements. It's to determine whether particular requirements are necessary, evidence-based, proportionate to the public health, safety, and welfare risks of the occupation, and reasonably accessible to qualified applicants, especially in rural and frontier communities. The second one is practice, authority, and clinical oversight. So this area looks at whether qualified licensees are prevented from performing specific tasks or oversight functions in a rural, correctional, congregate care, or other underserved setting. It's not a proposal for a broad scope expansion. Any possible change would need to focus on a defined task and include appropriate training, supervision, accountability, and public safety protections. The review should not create a new credential, authorize blanket scope expansion, or substitute one profession for another without a defined competency and public protection basis. Okay. Recommendation 3. So this is supervised practice pathways, and it concerns trainees, apprentices, provisional licensees, and others who need supervision before they can become fully licensed. The question is whether boards can make the rules clearer about when supervision may be in person, remote, hybrid, direct, indirect, or provided in a group setting. Clearer rules may help avoid delays, but the right model will depend on the profession and its risks. The underlying recommendation recognizes that ambiguous supervision standards, limited supervisor availability, and uncertainty about remote, hybrid, or group models can delay candidate practice and rural service delivery. It also recognizes that a single supervision model is not appropriate for professions with different risk profiles. And then licensing data and medication administration. So this area contains 2 separate projects. The first would track where applicants are being delayed, for example, during completeness review, board review, testing, background checks, or verification. The second would identify who is currently administering medications in correctional, congregate care, and similar settings, what authority they rely on, and whether there are any gaps. The medication project is an inventory, not a proposal to create a new credential. The project doesn't change substantive, licensing qualifications. Its purpose is to identify where otherwise qualified applicants are delayed and to distinguish internal processing from delays caused by incomplete applications, third-party dependencies, discretionary board review, or other external factors. So it's a fact-finding and gap analysis project, not a recommendation to create a new medication administration credential. So just a couple points on these. Let's see here. Here's a little summary. So none of the ideas change a statute or a rule today. So the immediate question is whether more review, data, or clarification would be useful. And then also remember, not every barrier comes from licensing law. It may come from national standards, federal requirements, payers, employers, facilities, vendors, staffing, limited program capacity. And if an issue can be addressed through clearer guidance, a process change, technology coordination, or a partnership, legislation or rulemaking may not be necessary. So the main question today is which of these areas would you like to move forward? Um, if any.
Ms. Gully.
Hi, thank you. Just generally, I think all of them because they're fact finding, looking at limitations. We're not making any specific statutory changes. I support all 4 of these recommendations. I think that clarifying where our shortfalls are. I think I like all of them. Thank you, Chair and Aaron.
I really
Sorry,
like the
I'm
second one because this is Daniel. I just jumped
sorry.
on.
Go ahead, Daniel.
Because, thanks. We've seen that where we have to change laws to allow people who are trained to actually utilize their training in Montana. The big one is optometry. So I think that'd be huge and could really help rural areas.
Sorry, I'm gonna jump into. I'm on my phone, so I can't figure out how to raise my hand. But I'm not like opposed to any of these ideas. I just know that you all have a lot of work already on your plate. So my only caution is, if no one's expressing a big issue or concern with some of these, whether it's worth the resources to expend towards them.
And one thing I would say to that, thanks, Amy, is that I think that these would be good recommendations as far as like study projects or, work for after the 2027 session. I don't think that any of this can get fully vetted and realized, and so there could be introduction into the next session because we are running up on some tight deadlines here. And so this to me seems like it's more of a broad, like, let's study these, kind of like what was put in for the national certification thing is like an implementation project or a research project for the licensing division to kind of work on and come up with some, if there's any recommendations for 2029. Sorry to put a lot more work on your team, Kevin.
This is Kristen. If I can, I I think that there might be some uh, urgency with medication administration. We see a lot of board complaints come across, um, and it's just an area of high need. And I think that looking at workforce access review of education and the medication administration, the first and then the last one on these, do have relevant, somewhat urgent potential benefit if they're looked at sooner than later. Thank you.
Representative Buttrey.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And Aaron, thank you for your additional explanation. I support all of these. I think it's something legislatively that we've sort of addressed per discipline over the past couple sessions, and this takes a little bit broader look at all the licensing entities and make sure that I really like when we're looking at someone's scope of training and that they're able to practice to whatever they've been trained to. So I think this is a good effort to start on. Doesn't stop any legislator or organization from bringing something forward in the next legislative session, but we can do a comprehensive review and at the very worst, bring forward some good suggestions for the 29th session. So I support them all. And if you're looking for a motion, I'd be happy to make one.
Are we looking for a motion, Aaron, on this one?
Sure, if you want to. And I guess the one question that I would want is, do you want each recommendation, do you want to present each recommendation separately next week for like a or do you want it more as like a comprehensive recommendation?
I think it makes it seems like there's pretty strong support for all the recommendations here. I think grouping them makes sense just for ease of time and
So,
um,
so Aaron, this is Jen. I agree that there is a lot of support here on the call forum. I do think, though, that the background checks is one area where there could be concern, where another area of concern is like the scope of practice examination. So I do think they need to be presented separately. I know that some members of the groups that I represent are still discussing internally how comfortable they are with some of the scope of practice language. And we're not objecting to any of them. In fact, right now, we're like, yes, we see nothing wrong right now. And they're still reviewing. So I would like to have the chance to parse them out and discuss them, even if it's just, okay, this is this one, the committee likes it, move on. I don't think it should take a ton of time.
So, Mr. Chair, what I would suggest is I'd like to make a motion to bring all four of those proposals forward to the full task force and do that as a single motion, but also that when we discuss those recommendations with the task force, that we do so individually.
This is Christy McCauley. I'll second that motion.
great, thanks. Any additional discussion regarding the motion? Seeing none, I suspect we could probably do a voice vote on this one. So all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same.
Aye.
Had one opposition there, Aaron. You recorded that. I think it was Mr. Brown.
Okay.
If I correctly identified that.
Correct. I'm with Amy. I just think this is extra work.
Thank you. Noted. All right. Moving on, Aaron.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. I need to get this. Okay, so then is this the right one? Yeah. The other topic that was in your work plan that we haven't addressed yet is has to do with reentry related barriers. And so I realize that this is our last meeting and we're just kind of now starting this topic, but I did want to make sure that you guys had the opportunity to talk about every single thing that you put in your work plan as priorities. So this memo, it's a 6-page memo, so I'll go ahead and just kind of do a little review on it. So the paper gives the subcommittee some background on current Montana law. It identifies places where applicants may run into uncertainty or delay and lays out 3 possible paths forward. So the purpose of today is not to assume that the subcommittee will choose any particular option. It's just to walk through the issues, hear your questions and concerns, and then determine what, if anything, you'd like staff or DLI to develop further. So just a little background. Let's see, go to the background here. So Montana law already tries to balance 2 goals, giving people a meaningful opportunity to work after a conviction and protecting the public. A conviction's not an automatic bar to a license, and a licensing authority cannot deny someone solely because of a prior conviction. A licensing authority may still consider a conviction if it relates to public health, welfare, and safety in the occupation and may deny a license if the applicant has not been sufficiently rehabilitated to warrant public trust. Montana law already contains an important re-entry protection. A prior criminal conviction is not an automatic bar to occupational licensure, and licensing authority may not deny a license solely because of a previous conviction. So that can be found in Title 37, Chapter 2 is all about criminal history. So current law also requires written reasons when a license is denied wholly or partly because of a conviction. Completing probation or parole, without another conviction is evidence of rehabilitation. What the statutes do not provide is one consistent set of factors for deciding whether a conviction relates to an occupation, what rehabilitation evidence should be considered, how much weight to give the passage of time, or whether a restriction or condition could protect the public instead of denying the license. So the paper also looks at related issues, and these include broad good moral character or suitability standards, which we've had lots of discussions on. Fingerprint and background check requirements, again, have had lots of discussions on. Repeated checks when someone moves through a licensing pathway, non-routine application review, personal history questions, and other profession-specific requirements. So some of these requirements may be important for public protection. The difficulty is that they vary by profession, may also be affected by federal law, interstate compacts, accreditation, national certification, or funding requirements. So that's just kind of the background. Let's see here. And I just put just a little bit about each one of these things that tie in that I just talked about. So there's some recommendation options. So the first one is a general Title 37 bill. It would keep the existing rule that a conviction is not an automatic bar, but would provide a more consistent process for cases in which criminal history is considered. The bill could require a clear connection between the conviction and the occupation before criminal history is used to deny, restrict, or condition a license, consideration of specific rehabilitation factors, written findings explaining what conduct was considered, how it relates to the occupation, what rehabilitation evidence was reviewed, and why the board reached its decision, and a consideration of a restriction or condition before denying a license when a less restrictive option would adequately protect the public. So this option would require changes to 37.1.203 and 204, and possibly some conforming amendments. It would not automatically repeal a profession-specific character, fitness, suitability, or disqualification requirements. And it should not become a blanket repeal of all profession-specific character, fitness, suitability, or disqualification provisions. I think this subcommittee has kind of determined that a blanket repeals on some of those is not the appropriate path forward. Option 2 is an inventory of specific barriers. So this option is to have DLI complete a targeted, time-limited inventory of profession-specific requirements. That review could cover moral character and suitability standards, conviction-specific disqualifiers, fingerprint, background check requirements, reference letters, and personal or disciplinary history questions. For each requirement, the inventory would ask a few basic questions. Where does the requirement come from? What public protection purpose does it serve? Does it duplicate another part of the licensing process? Is it required by federal law, a compact, accreditation, national certification, or a funding condition? So this inventory, this option would not require legislation. It's, again, a review, a study for the department to conduct. And so if the review but if the review did identify requirements that should be repealed, narrowed, or replaced, those could be brought back later as a profession-specific legislation. And then option 3 is administrative improvements. So this focuses on improvements DLI and the boards may be able to make under existing authority. And that work could include clearer guidance for applicants about disclosures, rehab evidence, the review process, timing, and hearing rights, consistent checklists for staffs and boards, a review of application questions for clarity, relevance, and overbreadth, better data on non-routine reviews, delays, denials, restrictions, and conditions, training for staff and board members. So DLI, we can begin this type of work without waiting for legislation as long as it remains guidance, procedures, forms, data collection, and training. A binding profession-specific requirement may still require rulemaking, and a mandatory statewide requirement may require legislation. So as you discuss these options, here's a little matrix. I like tables. The main questions are, do you want staff to continue developing a focused Title 37 bill, which is option 1? Do the proposed occupation-related and rehab factors strike the right balance between, I guess that would be if we were developing the bill, sorry. Should we begin an inventory in option 2? If so, what should it cover? What should be prioritized and when should it be completed? And should we begin any of the administrative work in option 3? So there's 3 options for you to discuss on reentry.
Thanks, Aaron. I'll just kick off by suggesting that option 1, I don't know that's necessary, particularly from our perspective over at corrections. I think a compliment to the department and the boards that I think oftentimes there's questions about the applicability of something for a person with a robust criminal history and as they reenter into their communities. But I think by and large, those are satisfied through dialogue, which is good. I would offer that I think option 3 is where I think the primary opportunity exists for us to simplify and clarify kind of some of the processes and expectations around the processes related to reentry and access to licensure for those that are reintegrating into their communities. So if there's work to be done there, I think there's prime opportunity with the Office of Reentry and staff from my department to really assess those barriers for those individuals and can kind of clean up administratively where there might be opportunities to improve. So having said that, open it up for additional conversation. Mr. Bragg.
Thank you, Chair Strauss, members of the subcommittee. I just wanted to share with you the good work that the boards and the department have been doing on this over the last 6 years, really. We came up with standardized disciplinary or personal history questions back in 2019 and have implemented those and have seen good responses out of those, as well as a limited amount of denials based upon prior criminal activity. I do want to state that from my perspective as the licensing bureau chief, I feel pretty good with where our current board-specific rules as well as overarching department rules related to criminal convictions are, just broadly in how we assess those. That was a concerted effort. I think it was back in 2021 in conjunction with the licensing board specifically, in trying to make sure and identify where there is a specific need to deviate from a broader standard for all of the licensing professions. So I just encourage the subcommittee to look at trying to make sure that that process is standardized. If it's something that we're going to target, getting back into necessarily a lot of detail for each board is difficult for myself and my staff to process through and trying to navigate how to advise or not advise, but consult with each of the applicants who come forward and present themselves to the department. We're certainly happy to continue the work that we've done previously, as well as take some more looks at where we can improve on good moral character, background checks, and the other Practice Act qualifications. I also know Director Strauss, I think the Criminal Justice Oversight Committee also has a bill related to expungements. That's really an area I'm keen to understand a little bit more from this subcommittee, if it would like to give any type of direction or commentary on past actions that have been removed from someone's criminal record and whether or not the department should be asking for information related to expunged convictions or deferred prosecutions. And I may have that incorrect. Ms. Stallkamp can correct me. But making sure that we are targeting our time on applicants who need further review, and for those folks who have had some issue in their past, similar to probably how we all have, whether or not we need to move those folks more quickly through the process. So all that to say, I think we're in a good spot related to criminal convictions. We certainly can improve. I don't want you to walk away from my commentary and think there's nothing to be done. But we're happy to continue that work. And if the task force or the subcommittee has any consideration or ideas related to expunged convictions, I certainly would love to have that. I also don't want it to, I guess, overlap with what CJOC is doing. And I don't think that it does, Eric. I think that that draft specifically would require us to include on our licensing applications a statement that says that if you've had a prior expungement, that there's an additional category that you can mark. And you'll forgive me, I can't recall it right now. But all that to say, certainly appreciate the work of the subcommittee and happy to undertake whatever work we can do to improve our efforts here at the department. So thank you, Chair Strauss.
Thank you, Mr. Bragg. Ms. McCauley.
Hi, thank you, Chair Strauss. I I had a real heart for the reentry related barriers, and I'm glad that we kind of put it to the end of this. I know that was by priority. But I think that a lot of our work on background checks and good moral character, I think the other barriers that we addressed largely have looked at and created an environment where these remaining things seem less necessary and less pertinent. Um, uh, I think from the standpoint of nursing, I think Mr. Bragg covered it well. I think that our board, and I don't know what it's like for the other screening panels and the other boards when they're looking at on non-routine licenses. But I think that it's well covered. I think the remaining reentry concerns that I have either from the DOC or in the pre-adjudication setting are not are more directed to delivery of healthcare and not a Title 37 thing. So I would support the administrative consistency and applicant access as you brought up, but I have no strong proponent or need to add extra work on this. I think we've covered it with our other recommendations. Thank you, Chair Strauss.
Yeah, well said, Ms. McCauley. I would agree with that sentiment. Any other additional commentary, questions? All right. Seeing, I would just offer Aaron and team that. So 3 is a conversation I want to have, but I don't know that it has to be within the context of this task force, unless that's something that you want the record to reflect that is an output from our work here. So if that's the case, I'd be happy to support a conversation about including that in the recommendations. But if not, I'm happy to take it offline and work with DLI separately and distinctly.
This is Kristen. I'll just add that in the process of that, if that's a conversation that I can help advance, I can present some perspective from the inmate clientele that might be pertinent both from that aspect and as a license board member. Thank you.
So I guess the question to task force is, would you like, or sorry, the subcommittee, whoever you guys are, would you like to move option 3 forward for consideration by the full task force next week?
Mr. Chair, Aaron, I do think it's something we should move forward. It's within the purview of the subcommittee, and I think one of the tasks we've been given is not only to look at statutory changes, but look at direction we can give to the departments to reduce the barriers to the workforce. So I'd move to bring option 3 forward to the full task force.
Thanks, Representative Buttrey. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Doctor. Any additional discussion? All right, seeing none, I'll try a voice vote again. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Who's that?
Sound like one nay. I did not catch who it was.
I think I did.
Okay.
Sorry, that was me, Amy.
Yep. Okay.
All right. Moving on.
All right. So the next item on the agenda, and I think this was I can't remember. Hopefully I sent this out to you. This was kind of a last minute addition for this week, but you all are part of other subcommittees, and we've done this exercise in other subcommittees where we compiled all of the like recommendations that came out of public comment and gave the subcommittee an opportunity to determine if those should be recommendations moving forward. So there have been, I think there's 4 on this document that I can share that came through in the past, I don't know, month or so for this subcommittee. And so these are just additional ideas. We obviously want to make sure that we're addressing all of the public input. So there's 4 potential recommendations. Each in this paper includes obviously the same things that we've been doing: the recommendation, a rationale, an action. So this is strictly from public comments. These aren't department ideas or anything like that. So they kind of are all over the place. But one has to do with behavioral health licensure examination alternatives. So the recommendation that came from public comment was to direct the department and Board of Behavioral Health to evaluate whether current examination requirements create unnecessary barriers for qualified behavioral health applicants and identify lawful competency-based alternatives or supplemental pathways that preserve public protection. And so there's just a very brief analysis on that. So this would be a study. This wouldn't be a legislative action. So the recommended motion could be that requesting that the department and BBH report on all of these things, basically just to look at it and try to develop recommendations if possible. Option 2, so this one has to do with, this came through public comment, Class D motor carrier market entry reform. So recommend a focused statutory review of this Class D certificate of public convenience and necessity process to determine whether entry decisions should be limited to applicant fitness, safety, insurance, service standards. This is not under the department's purview. So this is Title 69, which is, I think, Department of Transportation. And the PSC is included in this. Again, this came through under public comment, so I wanted to present it to this subcommittee. However, this is definitely out of the licensing bureau's lane. The next one has to do with PMHNP. I don't remember what that stands for. So an interagency review to align state forms, provider directories, credentialing practices, and Medicaid policies with Montana's existing, advanced practice nurse, registered nurse authority. So the comment that was included for the subcommittee, it identified 4 barriers. And then there is a section in the MCA that is obviously Title 37 that allows things, but it doesn't, let's see here. So it generally allows an APRN nurse acting within the scope of certification to satisfy a legal or administrative rule requirement for a physician's signature, certification stamp, verification, and others. It doesn't independently expand the scope. So let's see here. Basically, sorry, I didn't read through this very well. The action could be to direct DPHHS and DLI to inventory and correct state-controlled forms, directories, credentialing requirements, and policies that conflict with existing APRN authority. You could also ask DPHHS to separately analyze coverage reimbursement. So that was one of the recommendations that came from the public to look at nurse practitioners. And then the last one, and this one just came in like a couple days ago. And it is supervised experiential learning for cosmetology and barbering students. So we haven't really talked about this occupation at all, but this recommendation actually came through the governor's red tape relief like process, and but the commenter suggested that the barriers subcommittee take a look at it. So basically supporting legislation authorizing licensed cosmetology and barbering schools to operate structured school supervised externships for advanced students at approved sites. And you should all have copies, or at least they're out there, all of the public comments that back this up. So this is really just kind of a compilation of those comments. But this would be like right now, current law makes it unlawful for an unlicensed student to provide covered services outside of a licensed school. And a genuine offsite student practice pathway requires legislation. So this would just be kind of updating the barber and cosmetology statutes to allow for services outside of a school.
Erin, this is Jen. Do you have, I'm sorry if I overlooked it. Is that one in writing anywhere that I could,
Yeah.
rather than have you read it to me again? I'm sorry.
Do you want the actual comment that came through?
Sure.
I can bring that up.
Okay.
It might be easier. I know exactly where that one is because we just got it. It's right here. Okay, let's see here. So this is the comment that this came from. So I did my best to summarize it, but it's from the director of cosmetology at Helena College, who is talking about how unlicensed cosmetology and barbering students, let's see here, they have to basically, if you're working on your license, you have to work in a school. You can't work outside. So there's no ability in the law right now for students to participate in educational experiences like at nursing homes, schools, healthcare facilities, or something like that. So the reform, or the ask is to create an exception allowing licensed schools of cosmetology and barbering to offer school supervised externships or learning programs for advanced students.
Awesome. I know that this is sprung on us. I have oddly some background information on this. I know that's going to surprise you, but I think this is a great idea. And the reason I wanted you to read it back for me is I wanted to make sure that it came from someone on the education side of it. So they were really looking at the public safety portion of it, but also that it's a supervised externship. And I think that's really critical. I know a lot of people are like, oh, what's the worst that can come from, barbers and cosmetologists, a bad haircut, but they're dealing with some fairly serious chemicals applied directly to your scalp. And that does require some significant supervision. So I think that this is a fantastic idea. I would be all in favor of moving it forward. I know that there's definitely going to be conversation in the public sphere about this, but those are my 2 bits.
Ms. McCauley?
Thank you, Chair Strauss. I would piggyback off that. I don't know a lot about cosmetology and barbering, and nursing has done this in some way with the advanced practice setting, where the schools go out and will evaluate a precepting site and legitimize it, like you're teaching the right things, this is a right environment. And I got my FNP and then later my PMHNP doing this sort of remote learning where they came out and credentialed clinics in my regional area, and I was able to do my precepting here instead of going to a big metropolis. And so I think that utilizing that sort of way of getting these experiential learning through credentialed from the different educational programs is a great way to expand access to the learning model. So I would support that. I have more on, and so I would like to advance number 1 too. I'd support that. I don't know if there's more conversation on that, but I can't really speak to the number 3 option about the motor carrier, and it might be out of our purview. I like the idea of number 4. We need to be looking at ways where we can advance opportunity for behavioral health to get more out here. And if we can do it safely with the right education and the right examination alternatives, I think that a study looking into that would be beneficial. We need more behavioral health providers across the board. I would also add support for number 2. I am a PMHNP, that stands for Psychiatric Mental Health Nurse Practitioner. And I think this aligns with many of our other conversations in some other subcommittees about recognizing the educational background and the educational authority. And we're all about letting people work and practice to the extent that they're trained. And this public comment and brief speaks very educatedly about the skill set and the abilities of, and just modernizing these forms to reflect the skills and abilities of these licensees. And I think that we in the healthcare committee started with recommendation that we're looking at the most educated and the capable and within the scope of practice, and looking less at what the license type is. And so I would support 1, 2, and 4 and just don't know enough about 3. Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, again, I can't raise my hand. Is it okay if I provide some comments? This is Amy.
Please.
All right. I don't necessarily oppose some of these ideas. I just don't know yet what my position is. I don't feel comfortable advancing anything for that reason. I think some of these could have bigger implications than what we've had any discussions about. And this is not the only opportunity for any of these industries or entities to move forward with their particular concerns or interests. They don't have to do that with the support of the licensing task force. And so without having a deeper conversation internally with the folks that we represent and with this group, I just don't think that we're in a position to put support behind any of these ideas at this point.
Well, I'm going to counter that. I support it all because that's what we're here, and they're just task force ideas, and you can hash this out later. But to stop because we're not sure, I think is the opposite. So let's go forward, and then if it comes into policy at some point and we're not ready, then it'll be stopped, obviously, because it's easy to convince legislators to not do things.
I mean, not
And I
easy.
don't want to turn this into an argument. My only concern is I just don't want an idea to have the illusion that because we voted to advance something means that we supported it.
Ms. Anderson.
Thank you. Interesting conversation, robust. I appreciate that. I did want to weigh in on option one. I was just at a conference this week that specifically addressed some of the testing requirements for LCSWs, where there has been found through various studies that individuals of people of color go through the entire process of the training. LCSWs take their test at the end of their supervision, and then individuals of color have a way higher rate of not passing the test. And so at least one state has addressed that with additional supervised training. So I just want to throw that out there that it's something we should look at, especially for our American Indian students who are looking into behavioral health licensing. Class D is super interesting to me because I actually have someone in my life who's interested in doing junk calling. So now I need to research that. Thanks a lot. And then I would just reiterate Ms. Hensley's comments on experiential learning. I do think supervision is really important in this space, but I also know getting those services into facilities such as nursing homes can be very challenging. And I think if there's a way that people can use that to credit towards their certification and licensing, I think that might reduce barriers to access for folks living in those types of facilities. So thank you.
Additional discussion. Anybody want to make a motion about these recommendations, or how do you want to proceed?
Chair, this is Jen Hensley. I would move that all these proceed forward. And I mean, if no one else is comfortable, I'm certainly comfortable at our full meeting of the task force explaining that while it was not a unanimous decision to move this forward, conceptually, we believe that this does fall under the mission of this licensure task force. And I would also encourage folks to get the word out to the public so the public can inform us at the public comment period or before why we're off base on this. But I do think that generally, I haven't seen a reason not to move it forward as a concept.
This is Kristen McCauley. I'd like to second that motion to move all four forward.
All right, additional discussion. I would just offer that for clarity that we're offering to move these forward for additional conversation at the final full
Correct.
subcommittee, not
Yes.
necessarily supporting them conceptually.
Correct. That was the motion, and with actual clarity that this was not a unanimous support of these, but moving them forward as concept.
Yep. Any additional discussion? Try a voice vote again. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
All right, Aaron, looks like again just one opposed. Do you have what you need for that?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. So I'll work on kind of developing a little bit more information on each of these, and they will be similar to the training and education. They'll be separate recommendations or topics for discussion next week. One thing that while we're talking about cosmetology, we had earlier in the year, one of your recommendations had to do with interstate compacts, and this subcommittee provided a recommendation for general support of interstate compacts. So it was just kind of a, yes, we support it if everybody else wants it type thing. The healthcare subcommittee kind of dialed down to specific ones. You will remember, if you're not on the healthcare subcommittee, then you'll remember that in Billings we had the EMS specific support for the EMS compact and the social work compact. There are others, and so and there's other compacts that are not healthcare related. One of which is the cosmetology compact. So at the July, whatever the last healthcare subcommittee meeting was, that committee decided that to also like specify which other compacts it would like the task force to recommend moving forward on legislation and implementation, and that was podiatry, APRN, dentist, and dental hygiene compacts. So those three. My question is for this committee, since we're kind of talking about cosmetology and expanding access and all of that, would this subcommittee be interested in a singular recommendation to move the cosmetology compact forward? Or would you like to just stick with your general, we support compacts in general?
Jumping up to offer comment there.
I'm thinking, and normally I think with words out of my mouth, so that's why it was hard to understand. Would Aaron, the way you worded that, would cosmetology compact be encompassed under we support compacts in general? Are you asking us if we want to specifically call out cosmetology?
I do, yeah. And that was kind of the thing with the healthcare committee, and you're on that one, so you remember.
Right. Yeah.
So you guys wanted a lot more information on the EMS compact. That was huge, and a big initiative for rural health transformation. And then the other one was the social work, because that was one that was tried and was not successful last session. And then, but there's other ones that we had talked about, and what the commissioner was asking is if the subcommittees could actually pinpoint which compacts should be developed and be introduced in 2027. And so that's why healthcare said, okay, let's yes on APRN, yes on dental and dental hygiene, and yes on podiatry, because those are healthcare specific. There's two others floating out there, and I'm not going to ask you to weigh in on the athletic trainers one, because that one, we haven't talked about that one at all. But the cosmetology one is one that didn't really fall under healthcare, so I didn't want to bring it up then. But the barriers committee, since you guys had recommended compacts in general, I thought if you could specify that one. And that one was introduced last session and also was not successful. And one of the reasons why is the hourly requirement. So that is something that we could look at. Not saying that it has to be introduced, but just recommend, starting the process of moving forward with that compact.
And Aaron, I don't remember the specific hearing or debate around that compact from last session. Was the argument from our Montana cosmetology industry that other states didn't require enough hours?
I'm going to ask Jennifer or Kevin to weigh in on that. Kevin might remember, because he was our testifier.
Thanks, Chair Strauss. And for the question, Ms. Hensley, yes to your question.
Got it. And does the department have an opinion on this?
The department does not have an opinion on the cosmetology compact. At least one that I can share with you today that I'm aware of.
Oh, come on.
I appreciate you asking.
I mean, I'm going to risk irritating my stylist, but I would like to move the recommendation specifically forward for the cosmetology compact. And then I really do truly welcome input from the industry if we're off base, and I would love to hear why, but I think conceptually this makes sense. especially because many folks that I have spoken to that go into cosmetology do so specifically because it is a portable profession that you can, you're free to go from one state to the next as long as you have the client base that you need. So that's where I am.
There a second?
Second.
I'll second.
All right. Additional discussion from the group? All right. I would just offer that it seems obvious that we would support a specific compact if we're going to support them broadly. So for that, I'll vote yes. And with that, I'll try voice vote again. All in favor, say yes.
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 Aye.
Yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Hearing no opposition. So that passed unanimously. All right, Aaron, is there anything else for the subcommittee to discuss?
No, so I'm just going to provide a quick recap on what you can all expect next week. So I will include the updated or follow-up recommendations with the corresponding legislation for background checks and national certification streamlining. There will be 4 separate recommendations for the topic of training, education, scope of practice, all of that. So I'll separate all those out for consideration. And then for reentry related barriers, I will prepare the recommendation for option 3, which was administrative review. And then for the public comment recommendations, there will be 5 now, since I threw one at you. For the 4 that are listed on there, and also as separate topics for discussion. And then I guess what I'll do is I'll probably just revise or provide an update on the general background check, general compact recommendation to specify cosmetology recommendation moving forward from this subcommittee. So we've got 1, 2, 6, 7, 11 recommendations for next week. What I have done with the other subcommittees is I'll organize them, and so they kind of make sense as far as the flow, and provide a memo from the beginning or to put in the beginning of the section for you guys to use as you move forward with this work. And again, I will we'll work with Representative Seconder on these recommendations, since he's not here to catch him up to speed. But again, and like Representative Buttrey and Jen said, if you can help with the conversation, if you've been a participant, then I think that will make it a lot easier for us to go through these thoroughly in a week. And then just real quick on the meeting next week. So you all should have received a invite. You all should have received a map and a parking pass. I did ask earlier this week, I think, if you could shoot me a quick email and let me know if you plan to attend, and if so, if you're going to be in person or online, so we can make sure we have enough binders made for everybody that's going to be in person. And I have the agenda almost ready to go. I was waiting for this meeting. And so I will finish the agenda and send it out to everybody so you can see everything that's on the docket for next Friday. Yeah. And that's all.
All right. So move to public comment, I suspect, is the next item on our agenda.
Mm-hmm.
Great. So with that, the subcommittee now offers the public in attendance an opportunity to comment on any public matter under the jurisdiction of the subcommittee that is not on the current agenda. The subcommittee cannot act, but will listen to comments and may ask staff to place the issue on a future agenda. The chair may limit the comment period to proceed with the subcommittee meeting. Public commenters should state their first and last name when offering comments. So with that, is there any public comment?
I don't see anybody raising their hand. Oh, I do. Oh, hold on. We have something in chat. No, never mind. Okay. Nobody has raised their hand, sir.
Great. Well, that concludes the work of our subcommittee. Thank you all for your participation and insights. I think there's some solid recommendations coming out of the subcommittee for the full task force. I apologize I won't be there, but enjoyed working with all of you and hope you have a good rest of your day.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.